The orange dwarf star cast long shadows across Haven Colony's titanium alloy defense walls as Captain Sarah Chen completed her morning inspection. The colony, humanity's furthest outpost in the Carina Arm, looked deceptively peaceful in the early dawn light. 300 soldiers, that's all she had to protect nearly 10,000 civilians. Most military strategists would call it impossible. Sarah called it Tuesday. She paused at her favorite observation point, watching the massive agricultural domes shimmer under their electromagnetic shields. Haven wasn't just another colony, it was humanity's first successful attempt at large-scale terraforming. The biodomes housed enough food production to feed a small continent, making it a vital strategic asset for Earth's expansion efforts. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through her neural implant. Multiple FTL signatures detected at the system's edge. It's massive, ma'am. Sarah's augmented vision zoomed in on the sky, watching as space itself seemed to tear open. The Kraxan Empire's warships emerged like leviathans from the depths of space, massive, crystalline structures that seemed to defy conventional physics. She counted 50 capital ships, followed by hundreds of smaller vessels. "Sound general quarters," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "And get me a direct line to Colony Administrator Way." The colony's warning sirens began their mournful wail as Sarah made her way to the command center. Haven's civilian population had drilled for this scenario countless times, but drills were different from the real thing. She watched as people moved quickly but orderly toward the underground shelters, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Inside the command center, Administrator Y was already waiting. The elderly woman's hologram flickered slightly as she spoke. "They're not even trying to hide their numbers. This is a show of force." "No," Sarah corrected, studying the tactical display. "This is arrogance. They think they can overwhelm us with sheer numbers. They don't understand who they're dealing with." The Kraxan Empire had been expanding aggressively for the past decade, conquering or subjugating any species they encountered. Their technological advantage, particularly their crystalline computing systems, made them nearly unstoppable. Nearly. "Incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The holographic display flickered, revealing the alien visage of a Kraxan war commander. Their crystalline exoskeleton caught the light, creating rainbow refractions across the command center. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonic blend of tones that the translation software rendered into crisp English. "Attention, human settlement. I am War Commander Zixtal of the glorious Kraxan Empire. Your colony occupies space claimed by our people. You have one planetary rotation to evacuate. Those who remain will be considered military targets. Your primitive defenses cannot hope to resist our might. Choose wisely." Sarah stepped forward, her neural implant interfacing with the communications system. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Haven Colony is sovereign human territory. We will not evacuate, and any aggressive action will be met with appropriate force." The war commander's crystalline features shifted in what might have been amusement. "Captain, I count 300 military signatures in your colony. I command an invasion force of 50,000. Your courage is admirable, but futile. Do not throw away lives needlessly." "You're assuming quantity is the same as quality, War Commander," Sarah replied, allowing herself a small smile. "That's a dangerous assumption." The transmission cut off abruptly. Sarah turned to her officers, their faces illuminated by the holographic displays. "They'll attack before the deadline. It's their standard tactic. They believe it shows strength." "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up, "shouldn't we at least evacuate the civilians? The underground tunnels connect to the emergency launch facilities. We'd get most of them out before the attack begins." Sarah shook her head. "That's exactly what they expect us to do. But Haven has a few surprises they haven't accounted for." She turned to Administrator Wei. "How long until the quantum defense grid is online?" 4 hours, Wei replied. We need to keep them occupied until then. Sarah nodded, her mind already formulating plans. The Kraxen's crystalline technology was incredibly advanced, but it had one critical weakness, one that Haven's scientists had discovered purely by accident. Their crystalline computing systems were vulnerable to specific quantum resonance frequencies. If they could get the defense grid online, they might just have a chance. Begin dispersing our forces according to Protocol Omega, Sarah ordered. I want our automated defense systems on randomized patterns, and activate the Atlas units. Around the colony, massive hangars began to open, revealing what appeared to be standard construction mechs. But these weren't ordinary machines. They were advanced tactical labor and security units, designed to switch from peaceful to military applications in seconds. The Kraxen would be expecting simple defense turrets and maybe a few outdated spacecraft. They weren't prepared for what Haven could really do. Sarah watched as her soldiers took their positions, each one augmented with the latest in human military technology. Their neural implants allowed them to react at superhuman speeds, while their powered armor could withstand direct hits from most energy weapons. They were outnumbered, yes, but numbers weren't everything. They're launching dropships, Rodriguez reported. Multiple vectors trying to overwhelm our air defense grid. Let them come, Sarah said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. Initialize Protocol Prometheus. Throughout the colony, seemingly decorative architecture began to transform. Solar collection panels became energy weapon arrays. Atmospheric processors revealed hidden missile batteries. Haven itself was one giant weapon designed by the finest military minds in human space. As the first wave of Kraxen dropships entered the atmosphere, Sarah sent a final message to her troops. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. They think we're just another primitive species to be conquered. Let's show them exactly how primitive we aren't. The battle for Haven was about to begin, and the Kraxen Empire was about to learn a costly lesson about underestimating humanity. The first Kraxen dropship exploded in a spectacular display of crystalline shards and plasma, its remains raining down over Haven's eastern defensive perimeter. Captain Chen watched through her augmented vision as the colony's disguised defense systems claimed their first victims. But this was just the beginning. Multiple hostile signatures breaking through Sector 7, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his hands dancing over the holographic interface. They're adapting their approach vectors faster than predicted. Sarah nodded grimly. The Kraxen weren't stupid, brutal and arrogant, yes, but not stupid. Their crystalline neural networks allowed them to process battlefield data at incredible speeds, analyzing and countering threats almost instantaneously. Activate the resonance disruptors, she ordered. Random frequencies, keep them guessing. Throughout the colony, hidden sonic emitters began pulsing with varying quantum frequencies. The effect on the Kraxen forces was immediate and dramatic. Some of their crystalline technology began to vibrate uncomfortably, creating interference in their neural networks. It wasn't enough to stop them, but it introduced an element of chaos into their usually perfect formations. Clever, human, War Commander Sixtol's voice crackled through the command channel. But primitive sonic weapons cannot save you. Sarah didn't bother responding. Instead, she activated her neural link to the Atlas units. The massive mechs, disguised as construction equipment, suddenly transformed. Welting arms became plasma cannons, lifting claws morphed into missile launchers, and reinforced construction plating shifted to reveal layers of advanced reactive armor. All 8 LAS units, engage at will, Sarah commanded. Protocol Thunderstrike is in effect. The mechs moved with surprising grace for their size, each one piloted remotely by a human operator deep within Haven's bunkers. They engaged the landing Kraxen forces with devastating effect, their weapons specifically calibrated to exploit weaknesses in crystalline armor. But the Kraxen had numbers on their side. For every dropship destroyed, 3 more took its place. For every alien warrior fallen, 10 more emerged from their landing craft. The The sky above Haven turned into a chaotic battlefield as human defense fighters clashed with Kraxan interceptors. In the command center, Administrator Y's hologram flickered urgently. "Captain, the civilian fabrication plants are ready." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. This was where human adaptability would truly shine. While the Kraxan relied on their pre-manufactured weapons and armor, Haven's massive fabrication facilities were already being repurposed for war production. "Begin Operation Forge," Sarah ordered. "Priority on Type 7 resonators and quantum disruptor shells." The colony's massive manufacturing centers, normally used for producing agricultural equipment and construction materials, hummed to life. Three-dimensional printers began crafting new weapons designed specifically to counter Kraxan technology. Every civilian with engineering or manufacturing experience had volunteered to help, turning Haven into one giant military production facility. "Ma'am," Rodriguez called out. "They're deploying their heavy armor. Crystal walkers, at least 30 of them." Sarah watched as enormous crystalline constructs emerged from the largest dropships. They moved on 4 articulated legs, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city block. These were the pride of the Kraxan military, nearly indestructible walking fortresses that had broken the defenses of countless worlds. "Deploy the resonance mines," Sarah commanded, "and get me a direct link to Dr. Potel in research." A new hologram appeared, a disheveled Indian woman in a lab coat, her eyes bright with excitement despite the chaos. "Captain, we've done it. The quantum interference pattern is stable. We can disrupt their crystal matrix at the molecular level." "How long to implement?" "The defense grid needs another hour, but we've adapted the Atlas unit's weapon systems. They'll need to get close, really close, but it should work." Sarah quickly formulated a new strategy. All 8 LAS units switched to close combat protocols. Infantry squads provide covering fire. Focus on their walkers' leg joints. The battle shifted into an even more chaotic phase. 8 LAS units charged forward, taking heavy damage but closing the distance to the crystal walkers. When they got within range, they activated their new weapons, devices that generated precise quantum interference patterns, causing the crystalline structures to become brittle and unstable. The first crystal walker to fall was almost anticlimactic. Its legs simply shattered, the fractures spreading throughout its entire structure until it collapsed into a pile of inert crystal shards. The Kraxan forces actually paused in shock. Never before had they seen their mighty walkers defeated so easily. But the victory came at a cost. 3 Atlas units were destroyed in the attack, their human operators barely managing to disconnect before their mechs exploded. Sarah felt each loss keenly, but there was no time for grief. "Enemy forces have breached the outer perimeter," Rodriguez reported. "They're advancing on multiple fronts." "Activate the nanoswarms," Sarah ordered. This was another surprise they had prepared. Swarms of microscopic robots that could eat through crystalline structures like acid through paper. The Kraxan's greatest strength, their crystal-based technology, was becoming their greatest weakness. In orbit, the situation was becoming critical. The Kraxan fleet was systematically destroying Haven's orbital defenses, preparing for a final bombardment. They were growing frustrated with the ground resistance and were likely to resort to simply glassing the entire colony from orbit. "Defense grid at 85%, Administrator Y reported. But we're detecting massive energy buildup in the Kraxan fleet. They're preparing for orbital bombardment." Sarah made a quick decision. Activate the atmospheric disruption array. Full power. Haven's massive atmospheric processors, another seemingly civilian installation, suddenly reversed their operation. They began pumping massive amounts of ionized particles into the upper atmosphere, creating a charged particle field that would interfere with the Kraxan's targeting systems. "You continue to surprise us, Captain Chen," War Commander Sixtol's voice echoed through the command center. "But you must realize you're only delaying the inevitable. Even now, our main fleet approaches. You've earned our respect, but surrender now, and we will be merciful. Sarah checked the status of Haven's secret weapon, the quantum defense grid. 92% and climbing. They just needed a little more time. All forces, fall back to secondary positions, she ordered. Initiate Protocol Hydra. The human forces began a fighting retreat, drawing the Kraxan deeper into the colony. But this wasn't a real retreat, it was a trap. Haven's buildings had been designed with this scenario in mind, each one capable of becoming a fortress or a weapon as needed. As the Kraxan advanced, they failed to notice the subtle changes in the ground beneath their feet. They didn't detect the quantum resonance building in the colony's power grid. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or technology. It was their ability to turn anything and everything into a weapon when necessary. The trap was set. Now they just had to spring it. Deep beneath Haven's surface, in a vast network of tunnels that the Kraxan knew nothing about, Captain Sarah Chen was about to unleash humanity's true defensive capabilities. The underground complex wasn't just a shelter, it was a carefully designed military installation disguised as civilian infrastructure. Quantum defense grid at 98%, Administrator Wise hologram reported. But we have a problem. The Kraxan are deploying their resonance seekers. Sarah watched through the command center's holographic display as new threats emerged from the Kraxan dropships. These were their elite hunter-killer units, crystalline constructs that could phase through solid matter by matching their molecular frequency. No conventional defense could stop them. They're trying to find our command center, Sarah observed. Rodriguez, activate the quantum scramblers. Throughout the underground complex, specialized devices began emitting random quantum signatures, creating a confusing maze of false readings. The resonance seekers would have a hard time distinguishing actual targets from decoys. Dr. Petal, Sarah called through her neural link, how's Project Echo coming along? The scientist's hologram appeared, looking even more disheveled than before. We've cracked it, Captain. The sonic resonance weapons are ready for full deployment. But, she hesitated, the effect is rather messy. Sarah understood the implication. The new weapons would literally shatter the crystalline structures of the Kraxan forces, essentially killing them by disrupting their very physical form. It wasn't a clean way to die, but in war, you used whatever advantages you had. Begin manufacturing and distribution, Sarah ordered. Priority to frontline units. The underground manufacturing facilities hummed with increased activity. They had been running at full capacity for hours, producing everything from conventional ammunition to the highly specialized quantum disruption devices. But these new sonic weapons could be the game changer they needed. Suddenly, the entire complex shook violently. Multiple orbital strikes detected. Rodriguez called out. They're trying to crack the planet's crust. Activate the geothermal shields, Sarah commanded. Another secret of Haven, its geothermal power plants weren't just for energy production. They could create powerful force fields that use the planet's own magnetic field as a power source. The orbital bombardment continued, but the underground complex remained secure. The Kraxan were growing desperate, resorting to increasingly destructive tactics. But this played right into Sarah's hands. Defense grid at 100%, Wei announced triumphantly. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Initialize quantum synchronization. Begin Protocol Omega. Throughout Haven's underground network, hidden quantum processors came online. These weren't just computers, they were part of a massive quantum entanglement network that could affect crystalline structures at a fundamental level. The Kraxan's greatest strength was about to become their greatest vulnerability. Captain, Rodriguez's voice was urgent. Resonance seekers have breached level 3. They're adapting to our scramblers. Let them come, Sarah replied calmly. Activate the phase inverters. As the crystalline hunters phased through the walls of the underground complex, they suddenly found themselves in a trap. The phase inverters created localized fields that forced the seekers back into normal space, right in the midst of prepared killing zones. The battle in the tunnels became intense and personal. Human soldiers in powered armor engaged the trapped Seekers with their new sonic weapons. The crystalline hunters shattered one by one, their fragments littering the corridor floors like broken glass. But the Kraxen had more surprises. From orbit, they deployed their crystal seeds, terraforming devices that began transforming Haven's surface into crystalline structures. They weren't just trying to defeat the humans, they were trying to transform the entire planet. Ma'am, Wei's voice was tense. If those seeds complete their transformation, we'll lose control of the surface completely. Sarah had anticipated this. Initiate Protocol Gaia. Haven's massive agricultural domes suddenly revealed their true nature. What appeared to be simple hydroponic systems were actually biological warfare units. They released specially engineered bacteria into the atmosphere, microscopic organisms that could break down crystalline structures at the molecular level. The battle became a race between transformation and destruction. The crystal seeds tried to transform the surface, while the engineered bacteria fought to break down the crystalline structures. The sky above Haven turned into a swirling mess of colors as the two forces clashed. Underground, Sarah coordinated the human counterattack. With the quantum defense grid fully operational, they could now affect the Kraxen's technology directly. Every crystalline device, weapon, and warrior within range began experiencing quantum-level disruptions. War Commander, Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. Your forces are being systematically neutralized. Withdraw now, or we will be forced to escalate further. Zixtal's response was predictably belligerent. You think your primitive understanding of quantum mechanics can defeat us? We have mastered the very fabric of space-time. Have you? Sarah's voice was cold. Activate the quantum cascade. The defense grid's power output suddenly spiked. Every crystalline structure within range began to resonate at its fundamental frequency. The effect spread like a wave, each affected crystal transmitting the resonance to others through quantum entanglement. Kraxen warriors began to fall, their crystalline components vibrating themselves apart. Their weapons stopped working, their communication systems failed, and their mighty crystal walkers collapsed into piles of inert shards. But the Kraxen still had their fleet in orbit, and they were not done yet. New dropships began to descend, these ones carrying something different, massive devices that Sarah's sensors couldn't identify. Energy readings are off the scale, Rodriguez reported. Whatever those devices are, they're like nothing we've seen before. Sarah watched as the devices were deployed, creating massive crystalline formations that began to pulse with strange energy. The Kraxen were attempting something desperate and potentially catastrophic. All forces fall back to deeper levels, Sarah ordered. Seal all upper access points. Whatever they're planning, we need to be ready. The underground complex transformed again, massive blast doors sliding closed as human forces retreated to more defensible positions. They had won the first phase of the battle, but the war was far from over. The Kraxen were learning, adapting, and they still had overwhelming numbers on their side. But humanity had learned something too. They had proven that the Kraxen weren't invincible. Their crystalline technology, for all its advancement, had fundamental weaknesses that could be exploited. The question now was whether Haven could survive what was coming next. As Sarah studied the readings from the strange new devices, she knew one thing for certain. The next phase of the battle would determine not just the fate of Haven, but potentially the future of human-Kraxen relations throughout the galaxy, and she intended to make sure that future included a strong, independent humanity. The strange Kraxen devices pulsed with increasing intensity, sending waves of quantum distortion through Haven's defenses. In the underground command center, Captain Sarah Chen watched as her sensors tried to make sense of the alien technology. Analysis complete, Dr. Patel's hologram announced, her face grave. They're attempting to create a quantum crystallization field. If they succeed, they'll transform everything within the colony into crystalline matter, including organic tissue. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Kraxen weren't just trying to defeat them anymore. They were attempting to forcibly evolve all life on Haven into crystalline forms. It was genocide and forced evolution rolled into one horrific weapon. "How long do we have?" Sarah demanded. "The field is building slowly, but exponentially," Petal replied. "Maybe 2 hours before it reaches critical mass. But there's something else." She manipulated some holographic data. "The process is creating quantum instabilities in local space-time. If it continues, it could tear a hole in reality itself." Before Sarah could respond, a new alert blared through the command center. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected," Rodriguez called out. "Massive energy readings." For a moment, Sarah feared the Kraxen main fleet had arrived early, but as the signatures resolved themselves, a fierce grin spread across her face. "About damn time," she muttered. The space above Haven lit up as humanity's response fleet emerged from hyperspace. Led by the massive dreadnought EFS Prometheus, the fleet was smaller than the Kraxen Armada, but bristling with experimental weapons specifically designed to counter crystalline technology. "This is Admiral Helena Voss of the Earth Defense Force," a new voice announced on all channels. "All Kraxen forces, you are in violation of sovereign human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." War Commander Zixtal's response was immediate. "Your reinforcements change nothing, humans. The crystallization process cannot be stopped. Soon, your entire colony will evolve beyond your primitive organic forms, whether you wish it or not." "Upload the quantum defense data to the fleet," Sarah ordered. "They need to know what they're dealing with." She switched channels. "Admiral Voss, be advised. The enemy has deployed some kind of quantum crystallization weapon. If it reaches critical mass, we lose everything." "Understood, Captain Chen," Voss replied, initiating Protocol Sunbreaker. The Prometheus's massive hull began to split open, revealing what looked like a miniature sun contained within a complex array of magnetic fields. It was humanity's most closely guarded secret weapon, an artificial stellar core that could be used to generate massive bursts of specific radiation. But the Kraxen fleet wasn't idle. Their ships began to arrange themselves in a complex three-dimensional pattern, their crystalline hulls resonating in harmony. Energy began to flow between them, creating a massive defensive network. "They're attempting to create a unified quantum field," Patel exclaimed. "If they succeed, our weapons won't be able to penetrate their defenses." Sarah made a quick decision. All 8 LAS units switched to Phase Omega protocols. Dr. Patel initialized the quantum entanglement trap. The remaining 80 LAS mechs on the surface suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of fighting defensively, they charged directly at the crystallization devices. Each mech was carrying a specially designed quantum device that could create localized pockets of entangled space-time. "Ma'am," Rodriguez reported, "the Kraxen are deploying something new. Some kind of living crystal entities." Through the surface cameras, Sarah watched in horror as massive crystalline beings emerged from the Kraxen ships. They were like walking shards of living crystal, each one the size of a small building. The entities moved with disturbing grace, their faceted bodies refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. "Those aren't weapons," Patel breathed. "They're Kraxen elders, the original crystalline species before they began their forced evolution program. They've been keeping them in reserve." The elders began to sing. There was no other word for it. Their crystalline bodies vibrated at specific frequencies, creating a haunting harmonic that made reality itself seem to waver. The crystallization field began to accelerate exponentially. "Time to critical mass revised," Patel announced, her voice shaking. "We have less than 30 minutes." Above Haven, the space battle had begun in earnest. The Earth fleet's conventional weapons were largely ineffective against the Kraxen's unified quantum field, but the Prometheus's stellar core was another matter entirely. Bursts of carefully calibrated radiation began to disrupt the crystalline network, creating gaps in their defenses. "Launch the quantum torpedoes," Admiral Voss ordered, "Target their command ships." Special missiles, their warheads containing artificial quantum singularities, streaked across space. Where they struck, they created tiny, temporary black holes that devoured chunks of the crystalline ships before evaporating in bursts of hawking radiation. On the surface, the 8 last mechs reached their targets. Their quantum entanglement devices activated simultaneously, creating a complex web of interconnected space-time anomalies. The crystallization field began to warp and distort as it encountered these artificial disruptions. But the Kraxan elders were far from defeated. Their harmonic song changed, becoming more complex, more powerful. The very air seemed to crystallize around them as they advanced on Haven's defensive positions. "Dr. Petal," Sarah called out, "we need options." The scientist was working frantically at her console. The elders' song, it's not just sound, it's a quantum-level communication protocol. They're not just controlling the crystallization field, they're directing it, shaping it with their consciousness. Sarah's mind raced. If the elders were controlling the field directly, can we hijack their signal? Use our quantum network to interfere with their control? Patel's eyes lit up. Yes, but we'd need to get close, really close. And we'd need someone to interface directly with the quantum network. The amount of data would overwhelm our AI systems. How close? Within 100 meters of an elder, but Captain, whoever interfaces with that much quantum data, their mind might not survive the experience. Sarah stood up, her decision already made. Upload the interface protocols to my neural implant. Admiral Voss, we need heavy orbital support on these coordinates in exactly 10 minutes. Captain, no. Rodriguez protested. Let me do it. Not up for debate, Lieutenant, Sarah replied, checking her powered armor systems. You have command of the garrison. Keep our people safe. She headed for the surface access elevator, her mind already preparing for what was to come. The quantum interface protocols began downloading into her neural implant, and she could feel the strange calculations beginning to take shape in her mind. As she emerged onto the battlefield's surface, Sarah got her first direct look at the Kraxan elders. They were beautiful in a terrible way, their crystalline bodies containing entire universes of refracted light. Their song filled her head, trying to rewrite her very existence at the quantum level. Sarah began to run, her powered armor pushing her faster than any normal human could move. Around her, reality was starting to crystallize, organic matter transforming into complex geometric patterns. She had minutes at most before the transformation became irreversible. The closest elder turned to face her, its faceted surface somehow conveying curiosity. Perhaps it had never seen a human move directly towards it before. Sarah's neural implant was screaming warnings as the quantum data began to overwhelm its safety protocols. She didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Everything depended on what would happen in the next few moments. The elder's song reached a crescendo, and Sarah felt her consciousness begin to fragment under the quantum assault. But as her mind began to break apart, she reached out through Haven's quantum network, using her dissolving consciousness as a bridge between human and crystalline technology. In orbit, Admiral Voss watched the tactical display with growing concern. Energy readings are off the scale, her science officer reported. Whatever's happening down there, it's affecting local space-time stability. The battle hung in the balance, and the fate of Haven, and perhaps humanity itself, rested on what would happen in the next few crucial minutes. Time seemed to freeze as Captain Sarah Chen's consciousness merged with Haven's quantum network. Her mind expanded exponentially, fragments of her awareness spreading through crystalline matrices and quantum processors. The pain was indescribable, like being torn apart and reassembled at the atomic level. But in that moment of supreme agony, she found what she was looking for. The quantum harmonics of the Kraxan Elder's song became clear to her transformed consciousness, not just sound, but a fundamental programming language of reality itself. Did you think you were the only ones who could speak to the quantum fabric of the universe? Sarah's thoughts resonated through the crystalline network, her words carrying the weight of humanity's collective scientific understanding. The nearest elder's song faltered for a fraction of a second, surprise, perhaps, or concern. That momentary hesitation was all Sarah needed. Through her quantum-enhanced consciousness, she began to rewrite the crystallization protocols, introducing chaos into their ordered patterns. In orbit, Admiral Voss watched in amazement as the crystalline transformation began to reverse itself. What in God's name is happening down there? The quantum field is becoming unstable, her science officer reported. But it's not random. There's a pattern to it. Someone's controlling it. The Prometheus's artificial stellar core pulsed with renewed energy, its radiation synchronized with the chaotic patterns emanating from Haven's surface. The combined effect began to shatter the Kraxan fleet's unified defensive field. On the ground, the 8 last mechs pressed their advantage. Their quantum entanglement devices, now synchronized with Sarah's consciousness, created a web of reality-warping effects that trapped the Kraxan forces in pockets of distorted space-time. War Commander Sixtol's voice crackled through all frequencies, filled with rage and disbelief. "What have you done? How dare you pervert the sacred harmonics?" Sarah couldn't respond. Her consciousness was too fragmented, spread across too many systems. But Dr. Puttle, monitoring her vital signs from the command center, understood what was happening. "She's not just disrupting their control," Puttle announced, her voice filled with awe. "She's learning their quantum language, teaching our systems how to speak it. We're not just fighting them anymore, we're evolving our technology in real time." The Kraxan elders, realizing the danger, changed their strategy. Their harmonic song shifted to a deeper, more primordial frequency, one that threatened to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. "They're trying to initiate a quantum collapse," Paytil screamed. "They'll destroy Haven and half the solar system with it." But Sarah was already moving to counter them. Her fragmented consciousness reached out to the Prometheus's stellar core, using it as a focal point for a new kind of quantum manipulation. The artificial star began to pulse with precisely calculated frequencies, creating a stabilizing resonance that fought against the Elders' destructive harmonics. Admiral Voss, recognizing the strategy, ordered her fleet to reposition. "All ships, form a resonance array. Channel all power to your quantum stabilizers." The Earth fleet moved into a complex geometric pattern, their ships' quantum systems linking together to amplify the Prometheus stabilizing effect. It was a dangerous gambit. If the calculations were off by even a fraction, they could accelerate the very collapse they were trying to prevent. Lieutenant Rodriguez, watching from Haven's command center, suddenly noticed something extraordinary. The crystalline transformations, they're not just reversing. They're changing. He was right. The crystalline structures weren't returning to their original organic forms. Instead, they were transforming into something new, a hybrid state that combined the best properties of both organic and crystalline matter. "She's not just fighting them," Purtell whispered. "She's showing them another way." Through her quantum-enhanced perception, Sarah could see the truth about the Kraxan elders. They weren't evil. They were afraid. Their forced evolution program, their conquest of other species, it was all driven by a deep-seated fear of extinction. They believed that only by transforming all life into crystalline forms could they ensure their survival. Sarah reached out to them, not with weapons or threats, but with understanding. Through the quantum network, she shared humanity's history, their struggles, their failures, and their ultimate triumph in finding ways to adapt without losing their essential nature. The eldest of the crystalline beings, a massive entity that shimmered with countless facets, suddenly changed its harmonic pattern. Its song became questioning, curious. The other elders followed suit, their destructive frequencies shifting to a more neutral resonance. In orbit, the space battle ground to a halt as both sides felt the change in the quantum field. The Kraxan ships stopped firing, their crystalline hulls pulsing with uncertain light. War Commander Zixtol, sensing the shift in his superior's attitude, tried to regain control of the situation. The Elder's decree must not be questioned. The evolution must continue. But his words fell on deaf ears. The Elders had seen another possibility, one that didn't require the destruction or forced transformation of other species. Through her scattered consciousness, Sarah managed to form words that echoed through both quantum and normal space. Evolution doesn't have to mean elimination. Change doesn't have to mean destruction. We can find a way forward together. The quantum field around Haven began to stabilize, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of reverting to its original state or becoming fully crystalline, it settled into a new pattern, one that accommodated both organic and crystalline life. Admiral Voss, seeing an opportunity, opened a channel to both fleets. We propose an immediate cessation of hostilities. Let us discuss a future that benefits both our species. The eldest of the Kraxan beings responded with a harmonic that translated as agreement. But the crisis wasn't over yet. Sarah's consciousness was still scattered throughout the quantum network, and the strain on her mind and body was reaching critical levels. Captain Chen's neural patterns are breaking down, Patel reported urgently. If we don't get her out of the network soon, there won't be anything left to save. The Elders, sensing Sarah's predicament, did something unprecedented. They joined their consciousness with hers, using their ancient understanding of quantum mechanics to help guide her scattered fragments back together. As Sarah's mind began to reassemble itself, she caught glimpses of the Elders' true nature, their ancient history, their hopes, their fears, and they, in turn, saw humanity's potential not as a threat to be eliminated, but as partners in the great dance of evolution. The battle for Haven was ending, but the real challenges and opportunities were just beginning. The skies above Haven shimmered with quantum energies as Sarah Chen's consciousness slowly reformed. The process was excruciating, like reassembling a shattered mirror while trying to remember what the original image looked like. Without the Kraxan Elder's help, her mind would have been lost forever in the quantum network. Neural pattern stabilization at 67% and climbing. Dr. Patel's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Captain, if you can hear me, try to focus on your physical form. In the command center, Lieutenant Rodriguez and Administrator Wei watched anxiously as Sarah's vital signs fluctuated wildly on the holographic displays. The captain's powered armor lay crumpled on the surface, its systems overloaded by the massive quantum surge that had coursed through it. Movement in the Kraxan fleet. Admiral Voss reported from orbit. Their ships are transforming. The crystalline vessels were indeed changing, their rigid geometric patterns flowing into more organic shapes while still retaining their crystalline nature. It was as if they were adopting the same hybrid state that Sarah had inadvertently created during the battle. War Commander Zixtol, watching his fleet's transformation from his command ship, finally understood the full implications of what was happening. The Elders hadn't just stopped the war, they were fundamentally changing the course of Kraxan civilization itself. "This is impossible," he whispered, his crystalline form resonating with confusion. "The great evolution cannot be altered. The plan has guided us for millennia." But the eldest of the Kraxan beings, now hovering near Sarah's position, sent out a harmonic that translated clearly to all who could hear it. Plans can change. Evolution is not a straight path, but a web of possibilities. The humans have shown us this truth. Sarah's consciousness finally settled back into her physical form, though she retained a strange awareness of the quantum realm. Her neural implant had been permanently altered by the experience, creating a bridge between human and crystalline technology that had never existed before. She opened her eyes to find herself suspended in a field of crystalline energy, surrounded by the towering forms of the Kraxan Elders. Their faces, if they could be called that, were arrays of geometric patterns that somehow conveyed both wisdom and regret. "Your sacrifice has taught us much," Sarah Chen, the eldest, communicated directly into her mind. We'd have forgotten that true evolution comes from understanding, not conquest. The scene was being broadcast throughout Haven and to both fleets. Humans and Kraxen alike watched in amazement as centuries of conflict gave way to the possibility of something new. Admiral Voss, ever the pragmatist, began organizing the immediate necessities. All ships, maintain position but power down weapons systems. Medical teams to the surface. And someone get me a quantum physicist who can explain what the hell just happened. Dr. Patel was already rushing to the surface, accompanied by a team of scientists eager to study the hybrid matter that now dotted Haven's landscape. The transformed areas were neither fully organic nor completely crystalline, something entirely new, a state of matter that theoretically shouldn't have been possible. The quantum resonance patterns are incredible, Patel marveled, scanning one of the transformed regions. It's like the material is constantly shifting between states, but maintaining stability through some kind of quantum superposition. Sarah, finally able to stand on her own, faced the Kraxen elders. Her neural implant automatically translated their harmonics now, allowing for direct communication. "What happens now?" she asked. The eldest elder's response resonated through both quantum and normal space. "Now, we learn from each other. Your species has shown us that there are many paths to evolution. Perhaps it is time for the Kraxen Empire to evolve in a different way." War Commander Zixtol, who had landed on the surface with a contingent of his warriors, stepped forward. His crystalline form had also begun to show signs of the hybrid transformation. "But what of our mission? Our destiny to perfect all life in the galaxy?" "Perfection," Sarah responded, her voice carrying the weight of her recent experience, "isn't about making everything the same. It's about finding strength in diversity, in the combination of different approaches and perspectives." The quantum field around Haven had stabilized into a permanent state of flux, creating areas where both organic and crystalline life could thrive together. It was a physical manifestation of the philosophical change taking place, a proof that different forms of life could coexist and even enhance each other. Administrator Wei, ever focused on the practical, raised an important point. Haven was designed as an agricultural colony. How will these changes affect our ability to feed other human worlds? To everyone's surprise, it was Dr. Potel who answered, her eyes bright with excitement as she studied her readings. "The hybrid zones are showing incredible potential for biological enhancement. The quantum crystalline interaction is actually improving plant growth and resilience. We might have accidentally created the most productive agricultural system in human space." The news sparked a wave of excited discussion among both humans and Kraxen. Scientists from both species were already proposing joint research projects, eager to explore the possibilities of this new technology. Sarah, still adjusting to her enhanced perception of quantum states, could sense the change rippling through both fleets. The fear and hatred that had driven the conflict were being replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. Admiral Voss's voice came through the command channel. "Captain Chen, Earth Command is requesting a full report. They're also receiving messages from 17 other alien civilizations who observed the battle. Apparently, we've caused quite a stir in the galactic community." Sarah couldn't help but smile. Humanity's first major conflict with an advanced alien civilization had ended not in destruction, but in transformation. They have faced extinction and instead found evolution, not through force but through understanding. The eldest elder approached Sarah, its crystalline form shifting subtly to appear less intimidating. "Your mind still carries traces of the quantum network," it observed. "You have become a bridge between our peoples, whether you intended to or not." Sarah nodded, feeling the strained resonance in her modified neural implant. "Then let's make use of it. There's a lot of damage to repair, both physical and diplomatic, and we have a lot to learn from each other." The transformation of Haven became known throughout the galaxy as the quantum convergence, the moment when humanity proved that evolution didn't have to mean conquest, that advancement didn't require the destruction of what came before. The hybrid zones spread, carefully controlled and studied by joint human-Kraxan scientific teams. Other species sent observers, eager to learn from this unprecedented development. Haven, once a simple agricultural colony, became the center of a new era of galactic cooperation. As Sarah stood watching the sunset through the crystalline organic structures that now dotted Haven's landscape, she reflected on how close they had come to annihilation. Instead, they had found something far more valuable than victory. They had found a way forward, a path that led not to the dominance of one species over another, but to the enhancement of all. The price had been high. The dead would be remembered, the scars would remain. But they had proven that even in the darkest moments, there was always the possibility of light. The future would not be purely human or purely Kraxan, but something new, something that combined the strengths of both. And as the quantum harmonics sang softly in her enhanced consciousness, Sarah Chen knew that this was just the beginning. The real adventure, the true evolution, was still to come.